Morning, everybody. I'm just waiting for everyone to join us and then we'll do a bit of a roll call. Can you confirm to me, Mike, when you've let everybody in?
You can't see me, can you? You can see that bloke.
Chair, everyone that's been waiting to come into the meeting is now in the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Morning, everybody. First of all, can I introduce myself? I'm Councillor Amanda Rigby and I'm the chair of this subcommittee. And I'll introduce the other members of the subcommittee, and if they could just confirm that they are present by saying present when I call their names, that would be very helpful. I have Councillor Karen Warrington.
Present.
And I have Councillor Steve Hedges.
Present.
Also present, and if you could confirm you're present, are Terrell Wallen, Senior Licensing Officer. Can you unmute yourself, Terrell?
Present.
Perfect, thank you. Shane Lewis, our Legal Team Leader.
Present.
And Mark Dunford, our Democratic Services Officer.
Good morning, Chair. Present.
Morning, thank you. I'll now go round and see who else we have on the call, because hopefully you've all registered to speak. Do I have Professor Roy Light?
Yes, you do. Good morning.
Morning, thank you. Do I have Richard Baker?
Good morning, Chair. Yes, you do.
Thank you. Do I have Isaac Mara?
You need to unmute.
I can't hear you, Isaac. Are you unmuted? I can see you're trying to speak and it doesn't look like you're muted, but I'm afraid I can't hear you. I'm really sorry, we can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Perfect, you're back now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do I have Mike Archer?
Yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Do I have Catherine Litteroth?
Yes, you do. Here.
Perfect, thank you. Do I have Kay Martin? I can see you waving, but I can't hear you, Kay. Can you say something so we can check we can hear you?
I am talking to you. Can you hear me now?
We can. You're breaking up slightly, but it's nice to be able to hear you. Thank you. Do I have Ian Muir?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And do I have Councillor Kevin Guy? No, we don't seem to have Councillor Guy with us. Mike, can you confirm that there is no one else who is on the call who hasn't been one of the people who said yes, they're present?
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you very, very much. We'll just see if Kevin can join us. I need to make you all aware that this meeting is being held under the local authorities and police and crime panels, open brackets, coronavirus, close brackets, open brackets, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, close brackets, England and Wales Regulations 2020. The Council has agreed a protocol to cover virtual meetings, and this meeting will operate in line with that protocol. This meeting has the same status and validity as a meeting held in the Guildhall. Can I remind you and ask all of you, councillors, officers and members, to keep background noise to a minimum and to only speak one person at a time and not to speak over others. Please, please, please put your microphones on mute when you're not speaking and then unmute when you're asked to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by putting your hand up, but given the fact we have quite a rigid order of who speaks when, I will go round and I will ensure that at the end of each of the sections, I'll go round once again and make sure everyone's had a chance to say what they want to say. If a member of the subcommittee has to leave the meeting, then please try and draw my attention to this by using the chat facility or sending a text, as the meeting will need to adjourn as 3 members are required at all times. When returning to the meeting, please also draw my attention to this in the same way. Members should also inform me if they lose connection and they miss any part of the meeting. Is that all clear for everybody? Good.
Yes.
I like to see lots of nodding faces. It makes me feel good. I'm just going to run very, very quickly through the procedure before I hand over to Terrell to introduce what we're looking at today. So I've done the first bit. I've introduced the members of the subcommittee, and I'm now about to explain the procedure. What we will do, Terrell will introduce this, and then I believe I have 4 of you who are speaking on behalf of the applicant. You will be given between you 20 minutes as per our policy to put forward the case that you have already put forward and maybe amplify a few of the points, but not to introduce any new bits of evidence. And then both the members of the committee and the other people who are present who've registered to speak can ask you some questions. Then we flip over, and the other 4 people who have registered to speak also get 20 minutes. And then the members of the committee and the applicants also have a chance to then ask those people any questions. If there were a responsible authority making representations, they would also come, but my belief is we don't have any of the responsible authorities. We then go round and very quickly invite both sides, for want of a better way of putting it, to summarise their case. I then invite us to go into private session, at which everybody will leave, other than the members of the committee, a representative from Democratic Services and a representative from Legal Services. You can be held in a waiting room. We will make our decision. I will then invite everyone back in and I'll give you our decision and our reasons why. Is all of that clear? Is there anything that's unclear to anybody?
Yeah.
Again, lots of nodding faces. That's good. I'm really pleased. Okay, that being the case, Terrell, may I ask you to introduce the issue we have in front of us today?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This hearing is to determine a new premises licence application made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 by Amahar Limited in respect of Spa 21 to 23 Holcombe Lane, Bathampton, Bath, BA2 6UL. The application is seeking to authorise the sale of alcohol for consumption off premises only from 0600 hours and to 2300 hours every day. The opening times within the application reflect the hours for the sale of alcohol. The application was duly served on all the relevant responsible authorities and advertised both at the premises and within Bath Chronicle. During the statutory period, 12 representations of objection were received, which collectively expressed concern that all 4 of the licensing objectives will be undermined. And the licensing objectives are the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the protection of children from harm. Prior to the hearing, additional information was submitted to the authority on behalf of the applicant and on behalf of K. Martin, and this information was duly circulated to all parties in advance. No representations were received from any of the responsible authorities, and the committee is asked to determine the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much, Terrell. Now, my understanding is that there are 4 people who wish to talk on behalf of the applicant. Please nod if I've got this correctly, which is Professor Roy Light, Richard Baker, Isav Mara and Mike Archer. Is that correct? Good.
No, it's not, Chair.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
They were sent in, so you're quite correct to say that because they were all sent in.
Right.
But because of the nature of the proceedings, we would make do with me mainly putting the case and Richard Baker and the applicant, Mr. Mahar, there if anyone wanted to ask them any questions. And the 4th person is in the background if needed, but probably won't be called on.
Perfect. In that case, what I will do, if it's okay with you, Professor Light, I will start my stopwatch at 20 minutes and hand over to you, and you can work out how you use the people who you have available. So you have until 10:30. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Chair. And we'd like to thank the committee and the local authority for organising this meeting for us in these difficult times. So we're grateful for this opportunity. You may know Bathampton. Bathampton, just outside Bath, has had a village store for many years. and it was an integral part of the village, but it closed down, sadly, about 3 years ago. Now, when it was open, it had a license to sell alcohol, and it had a license which allowed it to sell alcohol until 11 p.m. from Monday to Saturday and to 10:30 p.m. on Sunday. And what this application today does is apply for that sort of license to be re-given to the premises so that it can start to trade again and successfully put the store back into the local community. Now, there are 12 letters of representation, and it's interesting, I'm sure you've looked at them all and noted that there's some significant support for this store and this application within these letters. So, for example, Chris Leng says he'd be grateful for a shop. Kay Martin, who's here today, says the shop was useful for residents and for the village. David Mayo says he's looking forward to the return of the shop and the post office. Dr. Lutterforth, who's also here today, says he supports the shop. Dr. Griffin welcomes the shop and the alcohol. And the Barthampton Parish Council welcome the shop. And it's interesting to see that when there was a planning application for 21 Holcombe Lane in October 18, the Parish Council had this to say: the loss of the shop and the post office has been a severe loss to the village. So I think, without preempting anything, that most people would want the shop to reopen, and most people would want the shop to have a license. It's what time that license should be until, which I think has exercised most of the representations that you've probably seen. So hopefully, the application is for 11 p.m. And hopefully what the applicant says today, or what I say on the applicant's behalf, may make the people whose representations we're looking at today feel a bit more comfortable about what's happening and about the store reopening. Now, the store is going to reopen as a spa shop, and you'll all be familiar with spa shops. They're all over the country. I think there's about 2,600 of them. They've been operating in Britain for about 60 years. And what they do is they provide a sort of franchise support base for independently owned shops. And interestingly, in this case, Mike Archer, who's number 4 on your list of speakers, Mike Archer is somebody who works for a spa wholesaler. And he was contacted by the parish council, who said, is there any possibility that spa might be interested, because we really need to get our shop back. And he suddenly thought, well, there is somebody, and that's the applicant, Mr. Maher, who seems, although he's still there, he's just moved positions across there. Mr. Maher was already operating stores on a commission basis. He didn't own the stores for this spa retailer, wholesaler, and he was doing a superb job and had some 5, 6, 7 years experience of running these premises himself, and was doing really well. And he wanted to buy his own premises rather than working for somebody else, but he wanted to support somebody like Spa. And lo and behold, he also lives 3 or 4 miles away from the site of this shop. So it was almost like a marriage made in heaven, that all these people should come together and be the perfect fit for this. The village needs a shop. Spa is able to provide the necessary backup for that shop. Mr. Maher is the perfect applicant for that shop, being very well experienced, being an exceptionally good operator, and also living quite close by. So that was what was happened, and that's the application before you today. There's going to be some £80,000 spent on refitting the shop. It's going to have the usual superb spa range. It will respond to local customers if they come in and say, why don't you stock this, or would you stock that? Then they will do that, and they will become very much a local store serving the local community, which everybody wants. Now, so far as the way the store will be run, you've got the staff training manual, which has been sent in. Now that's Mr. Baker's manual. That manual is quite comprehensive. It's been, you will have looked at it yourself, it's been complimented around the country on its rigor and how good it is in providing the sort of training that people who work in off licenses need to have. And hopefully you'll feel that that's a very good basis for the people who work in the shop. Mr. Baker can talk to you about the manual if you want to, but past experience suggests that 20 hours would be more sufficient than 20 minutes. So if there's any questions, please ask him, but basically it's there for everyone to have a look at if they want to. We've also got a set of conditions. I haven't seen the previous license, but I doubt it had these modern conditions because it was basically a 1964 licensing act license, which was then converted over. So on page 32 of your agenda, there's a list of all of the conditions. I won't go through them all now because they're there for everybody to read, and I've only got 20 minutes, but they cover all of the usual areas that these sorts of stores generally have conditions to do with CCTV and so on. There are 18 CCTV cameras, which you'll see on the plan, which is on page 37 of the agenda, if you want to go to that. And the CCTV cameras are 2 outside, and there are 16 inside. And one of the conditions is that there shall be such CCTV at the premises. So if there was any issue inside, it's clearly covered and recorded. And even if there's some problems outside, if something happens outside, then we've got CCTV coverage of that as well. So hopefully, Chair, you and your fellow councillors will think that it's a good idea for this store to open and have a licence, and you'll think it's a good idea for SPA to be behind it and a good idea for the applicant, based on his experience, to be running it. But what are the residents' concerns? These are in our agenda pack from page 39 onwards. And again, I won't go to them and read them all through because you've all had the opportunity to do that already. Your senior officer mentioned all 4 licensing objectives, and I hope you'll agree with me that really all 4 are not engaged in this case. The first licensing objective is protection of the public on the premises. That's not something which, in my opinion, you need to consider because there's nothing to suggest that there's any danger on the premises. It's not an overcrowded nightclub or something like that. So we're not really concerned with that. So far as protection of children from harm is concerned, there's no evidence to suggest that there will be any underage sales or any problems for young people in these premises. There's a raft of conditions there which include all the usual Challenge 25 and refusal books and so on. So in my submission, the protection of children from harm isn't an issue. Crime and disorder, well, so far as crime and disorder is concerned, we have one example of crime and disorder which was sent in by Kay Martin recently, and I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to read it, and that appears to be an extract from a news feed of some sort, which talks about 2 years ago when there was an incident at the George pub and the use of the canal boat by groups of presumably young people, although I suppose more elderly people have stag and hen nights as well, but groups of young people who perhaps caused some problems and some disorder, and the police were involved in that and were told about it. Now, whilst that's a genuine concern, which is recognised, that concern isn't really something which would, in my opinion, lead the committee to say that this licence can't be granted or this licence can only be granted for a limited period of time, because it's quite clear from the guidance that we have, both the Baines licensing policy and the section 182 guidance issued by the Secretary of State, when it says the police have a key role in managing the nighttime economy and should have good working relationships with those operating. The police should usually therefore be the licensing authority's main source of advice on matters relating to promotion of the crime and disorder licensing objective. So we don't have any representation from the police. So paragraph 912 of the statutory guidance, 912 suggests that if the police don't have an issue, they haven't responded, there's no representation, they don't see the opening of these premises with a license as applied for will undermine the crime and disorder licensing objective. And we are talking about 2 years ago. As far as we know from what we've seen, there's been no reoccurrence of that. It's centered around a pub, and a pub is a very different enterprise to an off license, which is some distance away from the canal. I think about a 10-minute walk from the canal. So then we come on to potential public nuisance, and public nuisance perhaps is the one which is of most concern is to most of the representation, and that's about noise and also about litter. Now, as far as litter is concerned, there's a condition which says that the frontage must be swept daily. The applicant has said to me that he's going to put bins outside, so litter shouldn't be a problem, and again, litter isn't a reason for restricting the hours of the premises. So how about noise? Well, where's noise going to come from? Noise can come from deliveries. And again, the parish council are very useful in what they say because they talk about noise and they talk about deliveries. And they say that there shouldn't be any deliveries before 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning, and there shouldn't be any deliveries after 8 p.m. on weekdays. Now, alcohol would come in the ambient delivery. So we're talking about alcohol deliveries because that's all the Licensing Act deals with, not deliveries of anything else. So as far as alcohol deliveries are concerned, the applicant would be very happy to offer a condition which said deliveries of alcohol shall be only made between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. So that's what the parish council is suggesting. They're saying 7 or 8 a.m., but we're happy with 8 a.m. So deliveries of alcohol should be made only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on Monday to Friday. So that would deal with any issues or any problems that might be concerns about noises from deliveries. Then customers attracted to the area, it's envisaged that most of the customers will be local people, and therefore as local people, they'll be coming to the area on foot. If they do come in cars, there's not going to be enough noise of cars and engines and doors slamming and so on to cause any issues or problems. And also there are other off licenses in the vicinity, within about 1.5 miles around the premises. There are at least 4 other off licenses which are licensed till 11 p.m. So there are places for people to go already if they want to get some alcohol later in the evening. So as far as the applicant's concerned, that's probably all I want to say. Mr. Baker may wish to say something in his 8 minutes, or perhaps a bit less, 5 minutes, about the manual. Would you care to hear about the manual, Chair?
Let me unmute myself. Yes, maybe a couple of minutes about that would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Baker.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Ah, here we go.
I hear you now.
Now, an example of the inserts of the manual provided as part of the supporting evidence. I'll try and be as brief as I can. Effectively, no staff member will be allowed to work behind the counter to serve alcohol before satisfactorily completing the alcohol sales training. This is a documentary evidence which will be completed in writing, and it's also signed when completed by the trainer and the staff member concerned. So each staff member will have their own training file. Whilst they're undertaking the actual test, which is a multiple choice test, the DPS, I beg your pardon, Mr. Mayo will be invigilating during the time so that there's no by the member of staff, so it's done properly. The manual itself is split into a number of sections. Now, if you were to look, if you've got a copy of the evidence in front of you, you'll see at the bottom there is Roman numeral 4, which is the summary, the manual contents. Split into about 8 or 9 different sections, but I'm not going to take you through that. What I would like to home in on is sections 3, 4, and 7. Section 3. This is the section that covers the key aspects of alcohol sales from a member of staff's perspective. Page 3.2 talks about the licensing objectives. Page 3.9 talks about underage sales and duty guidelines, including how to check identification. That's on page 3.16. On page 3.26, there's details on how to identify a drunk person. Conflict management, and this is particular relevance, and it provides guidance for assisting staff in refusing a customer, and it also deals with the age-related, any age-related products. Details the refusal book and how to complete a refusal book, which is particularly important because if any responsible authorities wanted to undercheck a compliance visit, these will. Section 4, this is the mechanics of the manual. So this is what the Mr. Maher will, once the member of staff has completed the reading, he would then test that member of staff's knowledge. And be done via one of 4 or 5 tests that are included in the manual. They're not in the evidence pack, but they are included in the hard copy of the manual that Mr. Maher already has. And they vary in numbers of questions from 12 to 20. Are different. And they're multiple choice, although there's some written answers that are required, i.e. the name of the DPS, for example. The member of staff will be given a reasonable amount of time to complete this test, say 20 minutes, obviously invigilated by Mr. Maher. And if any questions they get wrong, he will cover afterwards on a one-to-one basis. Once the test has been completed to the satisfaction of Mr. Maher, the papers will be put into his stored training file, and go to the training statement at page 4.11. That has to be signed by both parties, the member of staff and the DPS, once they've satisfied themselves that all areas within that form are going to be completed. Once that's been done, then the member of staff is authorised, and an authorisation sheet signed by both the DPS and the member of staff is put behind the counter so that it can be seen by anybody visiting from the local authority. That's the quick version. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. And that's good timing. There's 2 minutes left of your 20 minutes. Have you said everything that you wish to say before we do move to questions?
Yes, I have. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. How I'll run this is I'll ask the members of the committee if they have any questions first, and then I'll ask the other registered participants if they have any questions. So I'm going to go to you first, Councillor Warrington. Have you got any questions?
No, I think the documentation is fairly robust, so I don't have any questions at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hedges.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think the presentation has been very informative. I'm quite happy at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll go through our other registered speakers. Catherine Lutterworth, have you got any questions at the moment? And apologies if this sounds patronising, but I'm not aware whether or not you've been to licensing before. This is an opportunity. It's not sort of a cross-questioning legalistic thing. It's an opportunity for you to get slightly more information if you would like. So it's not an opportunity for you to do your presentation. That comes later.
I understand. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I had a question for Professor, please. So my question was about the previous licence on the premises. So I moved into the village in 2016, and the Professor stated that the previous licence granted to the premises was to 2,300 hours. Since I've lived in the village, the shop was only open until 8 o'clock at night. That was my understanding, that those were the conditions that the previous premises was granted on. It's certainly my experience since living here since December 2016. So I just had a question about the previous licence, if I could, please. I feel that's
and rather than you answer, Professor Light, I think probably the best way of answering that question is if I ask Terrell, the senior licensing officer, who has the original licenses in front of her, and she can give the definitive answer if that's okay with everybody. Yeah, Terrell.
Great.
You need to take yourself off mute, Terrell.
Thank you, Chair. Catherine. Yes, the previous licence for Bathampton stores did authorise the sale of alcohol until 2300. It was a licence, it was carried across from the 1964 Act by a conversion in 2005. So it was converted, not varied, so it was like for like. So the licence actually did authorise sales until 2300. Now, whether, like any licensed premise, the premises licence holder wants to utilise all those hours, that is up to them, but that is the maximum, that is the parameters that they need to work to. So at the point of when that licence was surrendered in 2017, the licence did authorise the sale until 2300. The store operator may not wish to have opened until that time, because obviously he or she had the choice to do so. Does that help?
Yes, thank you for clearing that up, Tara. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Have you got any more questions?
No, my other questions I'll say in my bit of evidence, if that's okay.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kay Martin, have you got any questions?
So going back to that licence, you said it was based on the original 1965.
I'm really struggling to hear you, I'm afraid.
See or hear.
When those applications were made, did they?
Sorry, can I interrupt you, Kay? Because I don't think we're going to be able to hear. Can I make a suggestion? Could you switch your video? If you switch your video off, we may be able to hear your audio better.
Okay. Let's see if we can try. Hear it from a bit closer. Does that make any difference?
Slightly better, yes.
Hello?
It is slightly better. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, do carry on. And if we really can't hear, we'll have to come back to you. I think. But let's try for now.
Change at all? No. What I might try and do is rejoin the meeting. I can always try and rejoin the meeting in a moment.
Yes,
okay.
that may work. Is it
My
just me, or is everyone else struggling
question
to hear?
about the original license, was it did
I think you are going to have to try to rejoin, Kay, and see if you can get a better connection. I'm really sorry, I really can't hear you.
Did they have to specify on the original license the opening times, or was it just the time that was given? So therefore, because the license has been in play for a long time, was that carried forward just because historically all licenses were granted?
Would it be helpful if I repeat what I believe the question was, and then we can answer that question, and then hopefully we can see, I have done a text to see whether or not Kay can use the chat function to put her question in writing as well. I believe what Kay was asking was the fact that there was a previous license that was till 2300, I believe it was till 22:30 on Sunday. Does that automatically carry over, or does that not hold any weight? I believe that was her question, and I'm going to direct that one to Terrell. Or Shane, whichever of you chooses to take it.
Shane, do you want me to?
Yeah, if I can pick up on that.
Thank you.
It's each application on its merits, and the previous iteration of the license, information upon which you will place such weight you feel appropriate. It isn't determinative of the application, because you have to determine this application based on the information that is being presented to you by the applicant and the objectors this morning. I don't know if that assists, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I think that answers the question. Are you able to hear us again, Kay? And can we hear you? A suggestion has been put forward that you might want to use the chat function and type in a question. But if you can hear, can you nod if you can actually hear us and we just can't hear you? No. I believe we have answered your question, but let's see if we can get a better connection, or we'll try and put something on the chat function to make sure that we've understood you correctly. I will move on. The next person to ask a question is Ian Muir.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, good. You got me. I haven't any particular questions. I have a comment on relation to the police. We don't
If
have.
it's a comment or if it's something like that, could you make that part of your presentation? This is just the time to ask questions. Yeah. And the final person, I don't know if he's managed to join us yet, is Councillor Guy. Are you with us, Councillor Guy?
I am, thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I apologise, I've got a visual connection.
I can. The part of the proceedings that we're at is that the applicant has made their presentation and we're currently at the asking the applicant questions part before people such as yourselves, who's also registered to speak, get chance to speak. So have you got any specific questions you want to ask? This isn't your opportunity to do your speech. This is your, have you got a question to the applicant?
I did have a question, Chair, but I think it's been answered by Terrell, which was the history of the previous licence. So thank you very much for that. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. Excellent. I'll go around one last time and just check if there are any further questions given what we've heard from the members. So Councillor Warrington or Councillor Hedges, have you got any questions now given what's happened? You're both shaking your head. And for the record, I haven't got any further questions. All the questions that I was going to ask have been satisfactorily answered. So we now move on to the section where the other people who've registered to speak also get 20 minutes between them to make their points before they too can answer any questions. I'm going to go in the order I have on my paper in front of me, and so you know, so you can get ready to unmute yourself. It is Catherine Lutterworth, Kay Martin, Ian Muir, Kevin Guy. I mean, in effect, you have probably got 5 minutes each to the 20 minutes, but if one of you wants to take 2 minutes and someone else wants to take 7 minutes, that's fine. But to be fair, you need to have the same amount of time as the applicants got, which was 20 minutes. So you have to 11 o'clock, and the first person I'm going to ask is Catherine Lutterworth.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take more than 5 minutes. So I just want to talk more to the representation that I submitted, and thanks Terrell for her help with that, and particularly with the licensing objectives, crime and disorder and public nuisance. So starting with crime and disorder, I just wanted to pick up on something that Professor Light said about there not being an incident for the last 2 years. Now, I was personally the victim of alcohol-related abuse at the playing field on Holcombe Lane last summer. So that happened to me a number of times and was reported to the police. So that is a more recent incident than something 2 years ago. Also, I'm aware that within the last year, there have been incidences of vandalism caused again by in an alcohol-related manner at St Nicholas's Court, which is a sheltered housing accommodation a couple of minutes located from the proposed spa shop. So again, that is within the last year, and that there have also, I know that there's certainly a representation that's been submitted from an elderly self-isolating resident at St Nicholas's Court who's very worried about the increased vandalism, and I also have concern for these very vulnerable people that are situated very close to the spa shop. And also with regards to the George pub, so I'm aware of the additional information that Kay submitted about the incident a couple of years ago, but it's only, I've become aware that since the summer of 2019, that's when they stopped actually banning stag and hen parties completely at the pub. So again, that is within the last year. So in summary, for that first point about crime and disorder, I think there are at least 3 different incidences. Myself, my personal experience last summer, incidences, particularly over the winter, for vandalism at St Nicholas's Court, and the banning of hen and stag parties at the nearby pub because of the issues on the canal with alcohol-related incidents. Secondly, with regards to public nuisance, so it's been mentioned about noise and traffic. So I just wanted to make the committee aware of Holcombe Lane is effectively a cul-de-sac. So it leads to a very narrow lane, only one person can get through at a time, and it leads through to a number of different cul-de-sacs. So there's only one way in and one way out. I live on that road, and there is, when deliveries come with big lorries, it does cause quite a bit, and also the recycling van, quite a bit of an issue because you can only get through one at a time. So with regards to the long hours, that would be an issue with noise and traffic, particularly for the residents in the area. Also, I just wanted to just finish off by saying about similar premises. So Professor Light alluded to the fact that within 1.5 kilometres or miles, can't remember, there were similar licenses, similar premises open till 2300 hours. Now I had a bit of a look round similar village shops, and Freshford, which is a similar village to Bathampton, has a shop open until 8 p.m. at night. And Bath Ford, which is just over the river, has a shop open till 9 p.m. at night. Now those hours seem to me much more reasonable with the type of village that Bathampton is, and would be more suitable. Also with regards to the previous, since I've lived in the village, the shop's only ever been open till 8 p.m. And that hasn't caused, when the shop was open and selling alcohol, they didn't cause any problems. It has been shut for a while now, but till 8 p.m. seemed to work quite well for the rest of the village. And then finally, sort of other premises that are open with a 1.5 mile or kilometre radius. And the Tesco Express in Bathwick is probably the closest sort of competing place that sells alcohol. And that only has a licence granted till 8 p.m. at night. I just thought that was relevant in relation to what Professor Light said. And that's the end of my evidence. Thank you, Chair. Chair, we can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself.
Always the way, isn't it? Sorry about that, everybody. Thank you. Just to say thank you. And moving on now to Kay Martin.
Yes, I wanted to refer to a few of the bits that were spoken about, particularly the issue with the George and the fact that there have been no reoccurrence. The problem with stag and hen parties on the canal is a big one. It is advertised as a holiday destination for the boats. In fact, if you look up canalboatweekends.co.uk, it is specifically for hen and stag parties. They start off from Bath, and their first night is generally stopped off in Bathampton. If they go to Bathampton and they haven't got enough alcohol, when I lived on the canal, the most common question asked was, where can I get some? They drink to excess. That is the whole purpose of their weekends. And it is a big problem on the canal. It may not be in the pub anymore, but still a problem on the canal and with the boats. And the canal and just have information, get information. The problem that the gentleman said that the pub is 10-minute walk away. It isn't, it's less than 5. It's very close by. We are the closest place where anything can be sold. If the spa is open in the evenings, then you will get people walking up. I understand that the people who are running the spa are going to do what they can on the premises. That isn't the problem. The problem isn't on the premises. The litter bins outside is all well and good. If you get people coming up to take drinks, they will be drinking on their way back. They don't live in the area. There's no skin off their nose. They're likely to be tossing rubbish around. There isn't coverage, particularly on the way to Holcombe Lane down to the swing bridge at the canal, which is literally 200-300 problem with disturbance. Everybody has come across a stag party. It is a huge issue in Bath itself, and so there's a problem. Off licenses nearby, 1.5 miles away is Bath. That's a very, very big difference from being in a village. We are a tiny little village and we are a quiet little village. We don't want the differences coming in. We have no experience of a shop being open until 11 o'clock because there's been no history of it, although the license may have been that long. But in this license application, it states very clearly that they plan to open the shop until 11 o'clock p.m. So it's a very different ballgame from previous licenses. And I think that's a big, big problem. Those are my main issues that we've got. I personally live very close by. I don't want people, I'm concerned with the chemist, with windows. I think there's going to be a real problem. And it is late at night because that is when people are very, very drunk and they lose their ability to control it. And unfortunately, although I know that you are taught to discern who is drunk and who isn't. If you've got a group of 10 people, there will be one that can pass the test. So I see that as a very, very big problem. And it is my main issue. There are very little in the way of street lights in the village. and there's very little in the way of police coverage in the village. We see a constable, community officer once a fortnight, once a month. That's it. So those are my concerns. Not having a license, not having a shop, but being open till late at night, when after the pub shut, the only people that will be buying alcohol are those that need it desperately. I hope that covers everything.
I'll unmute myself properly this time. Thank you very much, Kay. We could hear you perfectly, so that's great. Thank you. Ian Muir.
Hello, can you hear me all right? Good. I would comment on, well, the comment I have mainly is that I live down by the canal. I'm self-isolating, so I hadn't even seen the notice. I was told about the license application. And it may seem that because I'm so far away, off Barthampton Lane, my garden runs down to the canal, that I wouldn't be bothered. But as I put in my submission, I do have the problem with alcohol-related drunk individuals on boats or on the towpath going in and out of Bath, who think that my garden is a suitable place to throw cans, beer and bottles, and other articles which I won't refer to. The fact that there is no objection to the police doesn't surprise me at all, because I have yet to see a policeman walking along that canal. I've been here about 35 years now. The police don't police the canal towpath, and there's no policeman in the village. And the only time I had a problem where I wanted a policeman, after an hour and a half, they said they couldn't find me, despite having a record on there. And they couldn't phone me back, despite having taken phone calls from me. So the police are not involved with this village. We don't see them. The noise, the likelihood of drinking late, if you're the only place that's open in the area at that late time at night, is likely to be high. If it's an ordinary village shop with the ordinary village customers, the previous people who had it, one tried very hard to sell lots of alcohol, and he used to run every 2 years, a wine tasting session at the other side in one of the hotels, which he invited everybody to go, and he would then supply cases of the wines they liked. He still gave up trying to keep the shop open beyond about 7 or 8 in the evening, and finally gave up altogether. I have no more comments other than that. I do believe, like the previous speakers, there will be nuisance and noise from late night drinkers. If the license, well, it's not license being granted, if in fact the shop stays open and they do try to sell until 11 o'clock at night alcohol. That's my statement, that's all.
Thank you very, very much, Ian. And last but not least, we have 7 minutes left for Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. First of all, obviously, as the ward councillor, I've spoken to a lot of people in the area, and there isn't anybody that doesn't welcome the spa reopening. So first of all, I agree with that statement as well. So I welcome the spa opening, definitely. However, I did do some investigating work. I went to St Nicholas's Court, which is literally only just down the road, and spoke to the warden there, and they've had a history of youths using that court that have historically come from the shop with alcohol and have been causing disturbances at St Nicholas Court with the vulnerable and elderly people there. So that's what has triggered me into asking for the licence to be reduced to 9 o'clock. There's also a history of youths hanging around on the park, which is just opposite the spa area, which has been alcohol related. And I appreciate that the police have not necessarily been involved, but I know, speaking to residents, that they have been involved and they have deep concerns about that, Chair. So those are the reasons for my direct objections. However, I do personally welcome the spa opening. The previous speakers have quite eloquently put the case forward, and I don't think there's anything else I need to say. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We now move on to the questions bit, and it will follow the same format in that the members of the committee will ask questions first, if they have any, and then the other registered speakers will be able to ask some questions. So first of all, I'll do it in the opposite order this time. First of all, I'll go to Councillor Hedges. Do you have any questions?
Yes, Chair. The shop at the moment is closed, and you're still getting alcohol related problems. So if we were to refuse this license, do you think it would stop all the alcohol related problems? That's an open question to everybody.
I was going to say, any of you who have registered to speak can answer that one.
Okay. There is a small problem at the moment, but it is indicative of the problem that alcohol sales can produce. At the moment, they can't get alcohol late at night, so therefore the problems are limited. I don't see that the small problems that we have in terms of the occasional things through the village, I see it as being every single weekend once the stag boats and the hen parties and the people who are local on this side, because bear in mind there's a toll bridge and it is very much two sides of the river. But once people realise that they can get alcohol here after they've finished at the pub, then I do see it as being a bigger problem. So no, I don't think it will change the status quo. These have been used as indicative reasons as to how big the problem could become based on the principle there's already a problem.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to add to that answer?
I think I'd just add that there are a number of other representations that were made of people that couldn't attend, including a vulnerable person from St Nicholas's Court who unfortunately doesn't have the technology to join over Zoom. And it has been a significant history of alcohol related problems. You know, there has been for a long time a village shop selling alcohol, and yes, it has been shut for a while, but you know, it's not just that there have only been incidences in the last 2 years. It has been long-term incidences, alcohol related and related to sale of alcohol from the shop. So I just wanted to also refer the committee to the other representations that have been made by people that unfortunately couldn't join us on this committee hearing.
Thank you. Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Hedges?
Yeah, well, I have one more question, if that's right, Chair.
Yeah, sure.
If, like Councillor Guy suggested, that the licence was reduced to 9 o'clock, would that make a difference to the community?
What the reduction in time of the licence, what the difference that means is that we won't have people walking up through the village late at night. There's no reason for them to go for a walk in the village because there's nothing to go and collect. So that's the reason for wanting to change the time. It's not to stop alcohol sales altogether. It's to stop people wandering around the village late at night. And unfortunately, because of where we are, people can come from the canal one direction and go round in a circle. So they go in a different way. And that means that, you know, they are going to be walking past a lot of houses. There's a green for them to play on. There's lots of things. And let's face it, we all know what drunk people can be like. It's just to limit the exposure to the village, not to do anything else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to second what Kay is saying. You know, we welcome the shop in the village. You know, it would be great to have a shop selling fruit and vegetables and alcohol in moderation. But it's the walking late at night. I mean, as Ian Muir said, we don't have a lot of street lighting in our village. We have little CCTV and basically no police presence. So limiting it to, you know, a reasonable time, bearing in mind, obviously it does get darker later in the winter, you know, until 7 or 8 o'clock at night with the sale of alcohol, I think that would be a reasonable compromise.
Okay. Have you any further questions, Councillor Hedges?
No, I'm done, thanks.
Councillor Warrington.
I have no further questions at this time, thank you, Chair.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions, but I will save them in case they aren't asked anywhere else. The applicants, do you have any questions of the other registered parties?
Yeah, if I may, please, Chair. At the moment, the people who live in Bathhampton are without a store, and they've all said that they would very much like to have a store. The premises are closed at the moment, and a bit of an eyesore. They're not attractive, they don't add to the area, they degrade the area if anything. With the state of the retail industry at the moment, the chances of any other type of retail outlet opening there, I think you'll agree, are slim. In order to successfully run a convenience store, a village store, there needs to be flexibility in the operating. When somebody decides to go to a village convenience store, they go there to buy a range of goods. The alcohol license is important, not simply for the sale of alcohol, but also for other things. So if somebody wanted to buy 3 or 4 items, including alcohol, and that store didn't sell it, they would go somewhere else to buy the 3 or 4 things as well as the alcohol. Now, we've been told in some of the representations that the store traded...
Could you ask a question, please, Professor Light, rather than make
sort
a further statement?
The background for it, Chair, if I may. So what I'm saying to you as residents is this, that whilst you're saying close the store at 8 or 9 as a compromise, the store can't open unless it can viably operate and make enough money to survive. Previous stores to earlier hours didn't. So what I'm asking you is, aren't you willing to work with an experienced operator with a fantastic track record of running 24-hour licenses, never mind till 11 p.m., backed up by a national organization like SPA? You're the customers. Aren't you willing to work with them, allow them to have the license till 11, and rely on them to do what they need to do to ensure that that license is operated without causing any dramatic inconveniences to you? Are you willing to do that?
Professor Light, thank you for your question. I am willing to support the shop in reasonable hours that do not cause the possibility of harm to residents in the village, public noise and nuisance. The village will only survive if it is supported by the village community. As you've seen, there are a number of representations against the extremely late night opening. If the applicant could show himself to be amenable and consider a shorter opening hours and particularly shorter licensing hours, then he will have the support of the village and the village will shop there, and therefore the shop will be successful. You know, we welcome the range of products that SPA sells. I think the previous shop was not successful because it didn't have the range of products that the village wanted. And you know what Professor Light earlier said, that the SPA would respond to particular wishes and desires. My husband likes good bread, for example. He's German. Bread is very important if you're German. You know, if the shop could respond to requests like that, then the village will support the shop. I mean, I'd like to call on Kay actually to talk about the sort of village appetite for a shop, because she's been running an emergency shop during this time of coronavirus. Her premises is usually cafe, and she's been running an emergency shop. So if I could pass over to Kay to talk about the appetite and support for the village. Her shop currently runs between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday.
Can I interrupt? That will probably be something that could definitely be said when you come to the summary of your case at the end. At the moment, all we're trying to do is we're at the asking questions and giving answers bit. So in the same way as I didn't particularly allow Professor Light to make a statement, I wanted a question. I don't think I'm going to allow you to make a statement other than a straight answer of that question. You will have the opportunity when you sum up at the end to say those things. Are there any more?
Yeah, can I ask a question? Sorry.
Who was that? Who said that?
It's Kevin, Chair. Can I ask a question?
You absolutely may. Yes.
Yes. So the professor brought up the history of the owner there. I'd like to ask if the SPA was granted permission to have the license at 11 o'clock, and there was found to be an increase in alcohol-related disturbance within like the first 6 months of it opening. Does the licensing committee have the ability to readdress the license, Chair? I
will answer that question. Absolutely, it does. Licensing is a permissive regime. You need evidence of harm to one of the 4 licensing principles for a licensable activity in order to turn down a license. But once a license is given, that isn't just it. Absolutely, a license can be called in for review if there's evidence of harm to any of the 4 licensing objectives. So please rest assured that whatever the outcome of today, if it ends up that whatever the licensing hours granted do cause a problem, that can come back before committee for a review.
Yeah, that's very useful. Thank you, Chair.
Pleasure. Are there any more questions before I ask mine?
Can I just respond to what the gentleman was saying about, did we want, you know, if we wanted a village shop, then we had to basically go along with these conditions to make it viable?
Very quickly, yes.
Personally, there are a lot of shops nearby. The footfall does drop off dramatically in the evenings anyway. Am we willing to see a shop survive if it means that we all get a lot of grief and a lot of stress from elsewhere? Then personally, no, I'm not at all. I would rather have a shop empty than the one that causes problems. And although the licensing objectives can be reviewed, it will be hard. It will be hard to get that reviewed because we'll have to gather evidence. You won't, if somebody's just saying, oh, there's a few bottles lobbed into my garden, that won't make any difference unless everybody gets together to do something about it. And it's always very difficult to change. My attitude would be this shop should survive well. And therefore, if it proves that there are no issues whatsoever at 8 o'clock at night, then perhaps they go for a review in the future to amend it. But in the first instance, what we've seen is somebody coming from outside of the village who's not going to live at the premises. So it'll have no impact on them, whether there is any problem at all. And they're just saying to us, well, you know, if you want a shop, you have to take all the conditions. I don't think that's fair to the village.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I've got a couple of questions now, if I may.
Could I just ask one more question before you leave me?
Oh, I'm very sorry. Of course you may.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Kay Martin, please, a question? There's already a licensed premises with an off license on that parade of shops next door, and that has a license till 10 p.m. Do you know who runs that shop?
I do.
Okay, I think that's questions been asked and answered. My questions are that do the people who've and apologies again if this sounds a bit patronising, there is a huge difference between opening hours and licensing hours applications, and I just want to get you all to confirm whether or not you understand the difference. So what we are looking at here is a licensing application which is about licensable activities, which in this case is about selling alcohol. We have nothing at all as this committee to do with opening hours. So could you all just confirm whether or not that's something you understand, or if you want me to explain it more fully?
Yeah, that's fine.
I understand.
Good. Okay.
I understand that.
So,
yes.
Perfect. What I didn't want you to run away with was the thought. So we could be in a position where the opening hours are till 11, but the licensing hours are different. And again, it's just a clarification. Are you aware of the Baines policy that we've got, which is that we should, where at all possible, keep licensing hours the same as opening hours, on the grounds that it has been experienced that it's caused more problems if someone's turned up at 10 o'clock and they want to buy 2 pasties, a packet of sandwiches and a bottle of beer to go with it, and they can buy the first 2 items but not the last. So are you aware that Baines' policy is to keep licensing hours the same as opening hours where practicable?
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's fine. And my final question, and it sort of follows on slightly from what Kay just said. We did obviously go to the police as one of the responsible authorities, and they did not come forward with an objection. Please don't think that we never ever take action, because we do. But it is a case of you would have to gather evidence. You would have to make sure. It's very difficult for us as a permissive regime to say that we won't grant a license if there's no evidence of harm against it. So although I know it's wearing, getting police numbers, everything like that is something that just has to be done. Again, is that something that you have been aware of, or is that something that's new to you now?
Oh.
That's something that's new to me.
Okay. So the licensing regime is permissive. A license is granted unless there is evidence against it. And if there is no evidence backed up by police reports, etc., it is harder to turn down than it would be if there were proper evidence. So it is quite difficult to be in a position where you'd say we can say that there's been a crime and disorder breach or a public safety if there is no evidence behind that. Ian, you look like you want to say something.
What is the level of evidence that you need? Because in most cases, I, for instance, don't see the people throw things in my garden. I don't actually see the people who are making the noise going along the track. And I don't want to knock up my neighbours and say, it's 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night. Can you actually hear the noise? Can you actually do something? I have in the past contacted the police, for instance, when there was a rave going under the bypass, and they came back and said we couldn't find it. I could still hear it. We don't get the police coming out to support because the police station is shut in Bath in the evenings, and we've got nobody in the village. There's no policeman, and I haven't seen our so-called community policeman since I've been here.
Okay, I understand. I think what would be useful if once we've made our decision, we also send out whatever that decision is, the notes that we send out normally from public protection about licenses and what you need to do in terms of evidence gathering and what you need to do if there is something that you want to take to review, because there are different bits you can do from public protection in terms of noise or from the police in terms of crime and disorder. But there is a need for an evidence-based submission, should I say. But once you've got that evidence, a licence can always be called in for review.
Okay.
I think that's the end of my few questions. There aren't any responsible authorities here, as we said before. So I will go round again and just ask you to summarise what you have said in 5 minutes per the side of the applicants and per the side of the other responsible people. I will ask the other parties, i.e. Catherine, Kay, Ian and Kevin, to go first. So if you could just spend a couple of minutes each just summarising what you want us to think about whilst we're making our decision.
Great. So, Chair, I think I'm to go first. Is that correct? Okay. So I would like the committee to please consider the evidence that has been submitted by multiple representations from people in the village about crime and disorder, that having a late night licence till 2300 would incur, and also public nuisance. With regards to crime and disorder, please consider the vulnerable residents at St Nicholas's Court. Please consider the history of issues at the playing field, including my own, which was submitted to the police, and also the issues with hen and stag parties, particularly with the George banning those from last summer onwards. With regards to public nuisance, please consider the noise and traffic with Holcombe Lane being effectively a cul-de-sac with many young children and young families living on the road. Please also consider similar village shops, Freshford and Bathford, open till 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock respectively. And the previous premises licence, the licence was till 2300 hours, but the opening hours were till 8 o'clock, and that fitted in well for the village. Thank you.
Okay, so to summarise for me, first of all, I'd like to just clarify, yes, my premises have an alcohol licence. We are a cafe. When the application was made, it was made very, very clear on the application that although the licence was to be till 10 o'clock, it was only for the occasional bistro night and evening, which was requested by the village. That is the only reason. There is no off-licence sales late at night. I live above the shop. I have no intention of opening late night in the evenings whatsoever, and never had, and the village knew that. The experience of late night opening, we don't have. And I think that needs to be borne in mind. We can't give you a lot of evidence because it's never been open till 11 o'clock. So therefore we can only go on our own best judgments and the evidence that we've got, and we've given you this today. Other local shops, the Tesco's in Bathwick Hill, all of the other shops nearby are open much shorter hours and have much shorter licensing hours, as do some of the spas in Bath. not all of them open late at night. We don't know anything about the shop that's coming other than they want to open from 6 till 11, 7 days a week. I don't believe that that is the right thing for the village. I do believe that it will cause problems. I can't give you a mass of evidence other than to say, look up the stag and hen parties websites, look them up. They show you very clearly that Bath is one of the stop-off points and Bathampton is one of the stop-offs on the way or leaving there. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Kay. Ian.
I think basically what I've said up to now and what Catherine Nutter has said cover what I want to say. Getting evidence, I think, is difficult. I can say that I know from a fact, because a boat sank at the bottom of my garden, largely because of the amount of alcohol they had in the front of the boat, which was much larger than they took. And it was a group of men, and there were twice as many men on who had joined the boat to start with. And it took the John Rennie boat to come along because of a 240-volt supply to pump it out. And it took about 3 hours. And there was an awful lot of alcohol left. And it was bought after they had hired it. It wasn't, and so they had to find somewhere to buy it. And we don't want them buying it in our village late at night after they've parked up here.
Thank you very much, Ian. And Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. The other speakers have eloquently put some good points across. It's been mentioned that some elderly residents of Nicholas Court are not able to get on board this particular Zoom session, so I'll talk on their behalf, if that's okay. They mentioned to me that they were very, very concerned about...
Can I just stop you for 1 second? Terrell, I think you need to come in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add, for completeness really, that the resident at St Nicholas Court telephoned me, explained that she didn't have access to a computer, and I offered her the opportunity to dial in because she had a telephone, and she declined. And according to the paperwork, I don't think she actually put you down as representing her, Councillor Guy.
Okay, that's fine. No, I'm happy with that.
Thank
If you
you.
want me to speak on her behalf, I'm more than happy with that. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll reiterate again, Chair, that the majority of people I spoke to in the village are very happy to have the spa reopening. And I'm, you know, if we do have a very reputable owner of the spa that's coming on board, I'm happy to work with them and ensure that there aren't any disturbances if you are willing, if you are likely to grant the late license. But obviously I would be very vigilant in keeping an eye, and hope the owner would be very vigilant in keeping an eye on any disturbances that might occur because of his license. But on the whole, Chair, I would prefer a more sensible licensing time of around 8 to 9 o'clock, which matches other villages of the same size of Bathampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. There aren't any responsible authorities to do their summing up, so the final people we hear from are the applicants. Again, about 5 minutes, please, to sum up.
Thank you very much, Chair. The village needs a store. Everyone's agreed on that. The premises are currently empty and they're an eyesore. I think it's agreed that something needs to be done about them. And we've got an experienced first-class operator. It's very heartening to hear Councillor Guy say that he's willing to work with the operator. And I'm sure the other residents who come across as very reasonable people with genuine concerns, I'm sure they will work too with the operator to make sure the premises operate properly. Because as quite rightly said, I think by Dr. Lutteroth, the village are their customers and they won't want to alienate the village customers. They'll stock the sort of products that the village customers want, and they'll operate their business in line with what runs well for them and doesn't upset the community. Excuse me. There are no responsible authorities, and what we heard from Kay Martin was that the problem is not on the premises, is what she said, and there's no evidence of any problems of these premises in the past or likely to cause in the future. And as the committee will be aware, but the other people here may not, the Baines licensing policy at paragraph 16.1 says licensing law is not the primary mechanism for the general control of nuisance and antisocial behaviour of individuals once they're away from the licensed premises and beyond the direct control of the individual. So that paragraph 16.1 is applicable here. We also have heard that we've got no experience of the shop being open till 11 p.m. So whilst they're genuine concerns, they're concerns about things upon which they have no experience. And the case of Thwaites and Wirral was sent in, which I'm sure the committee is very familiar with. And that case concerned a late night licence, which the licence committee granted and the magistrates court took away, and the High Court re-granted because it said, although the residents had genuine concerns, the court didn't take account of the fact the police weren't objecting, and also their fears were based on no evidence. So that's the sort of legal background to this. So paragraph 63 of Thwaites and Wirral deals with this, and had they had proper regard to the act and the evidence, they would approach that with greater reluctance to impose regulations and would have looked for real evidence that it was required in the circumstances of the case. And as the chair of the committee quite rightly said, both the Baines licensing policy at paragraph 18.6 and the section 182 government guidance at 10.15 says that shop, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any time when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting these hours. Now, in my submission, we haven't heard any good reasons. We've heard concerns, but we heard no evidence. And I'm sure that once these premises open, people will be very happy to have these premises there. They will use them. Everybody agrees they will be a boon for the village. They will help the village. The man who's running them owns them. He's the DPS. He lives 3 miles away. This is his business venture. He will make sure he runs it properly, and he'll make sure that he keeps in contact with people and make sure that he does what's necessary. So if we were in a live committee hearing, what I would be saying now is, after the hearing, please get together with the applicant, hopefully then the license holder, and have a chat and talk about things and exchange phone numbers. We haven't got that opportunity now, but what we can say is that the applicant, Mr. Muir, will give the shop phone number to any residents who want it, and they can give him a call if they think that there's noise or there are problems there, and he can sort it out. And they can also talk to him by coming in the shop, because he intends to work there most days, and they can discuss issues and matters with him. So, Chair, I would urge you and your colleague to grant the licence as applied for. The only condition you may or may not wish to put on is concerning deliveries, but that's a matter for you.
Can I just absolutely check my understanding? The condition that's being offered is for alcohol deliveries between 8 and 8, 5 days a week?
That's right, Chair, yes.
The condition you offered, okay. Thank you all very, very, very much. What we will now do is we will put you in a virtual waiting room. If we were in real world, you would actually go into a physical waiting room. Please do stay there, because if there are points that we wish to ask for further clarification, we need to invite you all back in so that everyone can hear everything that's being said. We will be in a different Zoom waiting room, and we will come to our deliberations, and hopefully we'll make a decision as soon as we can, and then we will at that stage invite you all back in. So for now, can I say goodbye to you for now? And Mike, if you could confirm to me when we're in a position where the only people left in our room are the members of the committee and Mark and Shane.
Shane.
Joined the meeting.
Right, we're now in main session.
Yeah. Hang on, shush, hang on a second, Chair.
Back in the main room.
I think we need to do what I suggested because we want to hear your reasons.
Can
Amanda?
no, it's all right. She's muted now.
Right. Better mute as well.
Yes, but the reasons will be to follow.
Mark, can you let Shane know that he's on speaker? Oh.
Hello, everybody. We've been having a few technical problems, for which I completely apologise. I think we have a plan, and I hope that that's okay with everybody. We did make our decision, and we were in the process of typing up. What we do is we issue a decision, and then we have a typed up set of notes behind it, which gives all the reasons why, and it takes on board what you said in both your inputs and orally today. We will still do that, but it will follow after this meeting as opposed to at this meeting. But we thought it would, the fairest thing for us to do is to let you know our decision now. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yes.
Yes. Could I see lots of nodding heads? Thank you. I think that's better than trying to, take us all offline and then try to reconvene afterwards. And it was a lawyer who was on the phone too, and he is very close to finishing it. So he will then circulate an email to all the members, and we will sign it off, and we'll get it out to you as soon as possible. But our decision is that we will be granting the licence as applied for, and we will accept the additional condition of no alcohol to be delivered between 8, alcohol only to be delivered between 8 and 8, Monday to Friday. And the reasons why and the mitigations that we want to see put in and all the other things that we mentioned in the meeting will be in the letter to follow, but the licence has been granted as applied for. Okay. And I think we can do no more now than we did have another couple of little bits of business for the meeting, but I think it would probably be most appropriate to say we'll hold those over to the next meeting because they're just signing off minutes of a previous meeting. So I don't think there's any urgency to do that, Mark, unless you believe that there is. So I think with that, I should bring the meeting to a close. Does that make sense?
Chair, I would just say I think if the other parties can all now leave the meeting, it would help if we could just round off the bits that haven't been done by finalising the previous minutes, if that's okay with you.
Okay. In that case, can I thank everyone for their attendance, and can I just invite the members of the committee and Mark to stay behind for a few minutes. We don't have our lawyer with us, which is why I wasn't thinking about doing the rest of the meeting, but if we think it's the right thing to do, then we'll do that. But everyone else, thank you very, very much for attending today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We just click the leave button, do we?
You click the leave button and we see you go. Yeah.
Hey, members. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, bye. Thank you. So I think we now have Steve, Karen, Mark, me, Mike, and Shane on the phone.
Correct.
Right.
I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Excellent. Right. I whizzed on through the front bit because I was given an alternative introduction, for which I apologise, but in our private meeting we did say that was okay. Can I look at item 2, apologies for absence and substitutions? I mean, we did that when we did the roll call, but do you want to formally say it, Mark? No, fine. Declarations of interest I didn't ask, but I'm sure we would have.
No, none.
No.
Declaration of interest. Excellent. There wasn't any urgent business. Meeting minutes of the previous meeting. So there was a meeting in between the meeting of the 23rd of January and this one, which was done under the major incident rules, which was conducted by Martin Shields, who made a decision, and he did phone me and took my advice is too strong a word, but allowed me to collaborate on it. It was around a taxi driver licence, and we made a decision to take the licence away. It was an emergency decision, so it had to be done at the time. And I think we've done everything else. So the only other thing, can I see if you are happy with minutes of the other previous meeting, 23rd of January? Steve, Carl,
Yeah.
I think you were both, is that okay?
I wasn't present at the meeting, so I'm going to have to abstain. Sorry.
That's all right. No, thank you. Are you now happy with me, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I believe that concludes our business. Yes.
I believe that does conclude our business. Did you manage to hear any of that, Shane?
He's on mute.
I'm unmuted, yeah, it's telling me I'm unmuted. I got all of that. I was just wondering if we could just skim through those minutes now rather than a protracted email exchange and having to incorporate lots of different changes, given that I'm on leave tomorrow.
Yeah,
okay, let's do it now. I've got another meeting in literally 5 minutes.
Right, well, I can whiz through it. Well, that was the